Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen, and today I want to talk about my wish list for this year's Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist. Now, I am cutting it very close. I am down to the wire here. This is Sunday, March 2nd, and they are announcing the longlist on Tuesday, March 4th. So I'm not giving myself a whole lot of time here, but I still wanted to throw my hat into the ring to talk about the 16 books that I would love to see make it onto this year's long list. Now, like the International Booker wish list video I did, this is going to not necessarily be a prediction. These aren't books that I'm trying to see how many I can get right. It's more about talking about those 16 books that I would love to see make it on here, whether they're books that I have read, that I've enjoyed, and would love more people to read, or whether or not they're books that I haven't read that I would absolutely love a good excuse to read. So with that being said, I kind of broke this wish list down into 4 different categories. So the first one is ones that I have read that I would like more people to read so that I could have more conversations about. The second one is books that I own that I'm really looking for an excuse to read to get them off of my physical TBR. The third is books that I don't own, but I am dying to get my hands on to read them. And then the fourth one, and there's just one book on this list, and that is books that I would actually hate to see make it on to this list because I don't want to read it, but I think that it's going to end up on the list. So there are 16 books in total, and let's just go ahead and start. The first category that I want to talk about are the books that I read that I would love to see make it on to this list. And the first one is Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesor-Akner. And this is a book that I read last year, and I really got along with it. I thought it was an engaging story. I thought it was sharp. I thought it was funny. I really enjoyed the author's writing style. And although it doesn't necessarily scream Women's Prize to me, it's a book that I would love to see more people read because I felt like a lot of people slept on this one last year and didn't pick it up, and I would love to see more people reading it and get this book into the conversation because I had a lot of thoughts about it and I really didn't hear of many people reading it, and I'd really like an excuse to talk about it. The next book that I read that I do think is kind of catnip for the Women's Prize is Passion Tide by Monique Raffi. Now, this is a book that I just finished a few weeks ago. This book is about a group of fierce females that come together to kind of stick it to the man. They are fed up with how women are being treated, the violence against women, and they take a stand. And it's obviously feminist, and it's really highlighting a problem that exists in many parts of the world. And it was written beautifully, and I really enjoyed my time with it for the most part. And it does feel like a story that the Women's Prize would want to bring light to. So those are the 2 that I have read that I would really like to see make it. Now, the next category that I want to talk about are the physical books that I have that I would love to see make it onto the list so that I can clear them off of my physical TBR. Now, the first one is a book that I'm going to read regardless in the month of March because I'm reading this for Ben over at Ben Reads Goods Reading Challenge, and that is The Fertile Earth by Rathika Rao. This is a book about female friendship. It's set in India. I believe it's historical, and this is also a book that a lot of people have been making buzz about. Everybody that I know that has read it has said it's fantastic, and I just think it really has a good chance, and it kind of seems like something that the Women's Prize would be interested in bringing attention to. The next one I feel is probably going to make everyone's list. I have really tried to avoid any topic related to predictions for the Women's Prize. I don't like to watch those videos until I've made my personal list because I am very easily influenced, and if I start watching people's videos, I'm going to be changing my list all around and second guessing myself, so I've avoided it. But this one, and actually the next one as well, they feel like almost givens to make it onto the long list, and I would be very surprised if neither of these made the list. The first one is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, and the next one is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers. Both of those books I have heard wonderful things about. They both feel or sound like they are going to be very much in line with what the Women's Prize judges might be looking for, and I really want an excuse to read them. Now, the next one is a debut, and it's a book that came into my life from the Aardvark Book Club, and I picked it up and I was like, wow, I really want to read this, but I don't have a lot of bandwidth to do it right now with all of the book prizes. So I hope that it makes it so that I can get to it because it really sounds interesting. And that is Good Girl by Aria Aber. And this book is about Afghan refugees. I believe it's set in Berlin, and it sounds very sharp, and it's supposed to be about self-discovery and a coming-of-age story, and it just sounds like it's going to be almost kind of like young and hip. And what really made me want to pick up this book more than anything was there's a blurb on the front from Kaveh Akbar that says that this is a no bullshit must-read debut. So say no more, I'm sold. I want to read this as soon as possible. Now, the next book is another one that was an immediate purchase for me. This is a book that is from an author that I read for the first time this past year as well, and I absolutely loved the book, and that is going to be Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey. This is a book set in Alaska, and it's supposedly a dark fairy tale. I read The Snow Child from Eowyn Ivey recently, and it was beautifully written. It was an engaging story, and it was so atmospheric, and I just loved her writing style, so I would very much love the opportunity to read another book by her sooner than later. Now, this is maybe a long shot. I'm putting this on here for a couple reasons, mainly because I've read from this author before, and I absolutely adored her last book that she wrote, and as soon as this one came out, it was once again an immediate purchase, and that is Private Rights by Julia Armfield. This is supposedly, I don't know if it's officially said to be a King Lear retelling, but it definitely has King Lear vibes. There are three sisters that have kind of been estranged from each other, and they're brought together again by the death of their father and trying to take care of his estate. And then there's like weird kind of sinister things that start to happen. I know I read Julia Armfield's Our Wives Under the Sea, and once again, that was a really creepy, unsettling book that just kind of got under my skin, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm hoping to see kind of maybe a strange book on this list this year, and this could definitely fit the bill for that. And last but not least, of the books that I own that I would love to see make the list, we have one called Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. This is a book that has to do with a young couple. They were started out as friends in Shanghai. They eventually realized that they had fallen in love with each other, and then one day the man gets up and he disappears, leaving just a note, I think, behind that says, "I'm sorry," or something to that effect. And then 60 years later in the States, their lives cross paths again, and it just sounds like a beautiful story. I love the fact that it's covering multiple decades, so there's going to be a lot to get into. It's also kind of a chunker, and there's usually one really long book that makes it on to the list, and this one just might be it. All right, next I'm going to talk about those ones that I don't own that I would love an excuse to get my hands on and read. The first book on this list is going to be The Lost Love Songs of Boise Sing by Ingrid Prasad. This is a book that I have heard so much about. A lot of people have talked about this and read it, and every single one that has read it has loved it. This book has had nothing but praise from what I have found, and I really, really want to get to this one. If I'm remembering correctly, this may have even been a book that I predicted for last year's Booker Prize. It was one that I wanted to make it onto that list, and if not, I really wanted to read it around that time because a lot of people were predicting it as well. But yeah, it's been on my radar for a while, and it's time. I would love to get to this soon. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that up until a week or so ago, I had never heard of, but now I feel like it is the it book right now, and everyone is talking about it. And the themes of this book are very much going to be something that I could see ending up on a women's prize long list. And that book is Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell. This is a book that is by an Irish author. The Irish authors can do no wrong in my book. I love a good piece of Irish fiction. This is also a debut, and one of the descriptions when I was looking into this book said that if you're a fan of Claire Keegan, this book is going to be up your alley. Claire Keegan is one of my favorite writers, and that immediately sold me on wanting to pick this one up. The next one on this list is a book called Thunderhead by Miranda Darling, and this is supposedly inspired by Mrs. Dalloway. The main character has the last name of Dalloway. I don't necessarily know for sure if it's a retelling or just inspired, but it seems to follow a young mother and her daily tasks throughout a single day. It also claims to be a dark comedy, which I found very interesting. Mrs. Dalloway is a book that I have always loved. It introduced me to that stream of consciousness writing style that I get along with so well, and I'm such a fan of Virginia Woolf and her works. It does make me nervous when authors kind of take liberties with authors that I have loved in the past, but I am definitely willing to give this one a chance. The fact that it has a darker element to it definitely intrigues me, and it's one that is going on my TBR regardless of it making it on the list. But once again, I'd love to have a reason to pick this book up as soon as possible. Moving on to The Echoes by Evie Wyld. This book is said to be part love story, part ghost story. I love a good supernatural element to a book, and when there are ghosts involved. I also am hearing a lot of positive buzz about this book too, and Evie Wyld is an author that I've been meaning to get to for a while, so this would be a great opportunity for me to do so. Next up, we have a piece of historical fiction, and what women's prize for fiction long list would be complete without a good piece of historical fiction, and I'm choosing The Glassmaker by Tracy Chevalier. This is a book that is set, I believe it starts in the 1400s, and it follows a long line of Italian glassmakers that live in Murano. There is a woman in that family that decides she wants to take up that profession as well, even though that's not a profession or something that women normally take up. So it has a feminist element to it as well, and it sounds really interesting. I've never read anything by Tracy Chevalier. I know that she has a very robust backlist of books, and I would really like an opportunity to finally get to something from that author. And then the last book in this category is called Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretser. And this is a book about a Sri Lankan woman living in Australia, and she is researching the life of Virginia Woolf. Now, I know that that would make 2 books on my wish list related somehow to Virginia Woolf, but it's Virginia Woolf, and I feel that is totally something that the Women's Prize would be down for. So fingers crossed. And also, this book was blurbed by Vivi Ganesh, who won the Women's Prize last year, as well as other authors like Tessa Hadley, Sarah Waters, Ali Smith, Jennifer Croft. It also received a Kirkus-starred review, so this book is getting a lot of praise, and it sounds so good, and I can't wait to read it. And last but not least, I did promise you that there would be one book that I'm not wanting to make it, so it's not a part of my wish list, but it's a book that I feel has a really good shot of making it. So let's call it my only official prediction, and that is All Fours by Miranda July. I cannot logically explain why I have such an aversion to this book. I took this one out of the library 3 times last year and could not bring myself to open it. Like I said, I can't explain it, but if it does get longlisted, I will give it a chance. I feel like part of why I didn't necessarily want to pick this book up was because I was hearing such mixed things about it. There was a camp that really loved it, and there was a camp that really hated it. And at the time, I just didn't want to take that risk. But if it does make it on, I will take one for the team and read it. And who knows, I might actually really like it, but time will tell. So there's my 16. So we have 15 wish lists, we have 1 prediction, and regardless of what happens with the long list this year, I have a feeling we are in for a really good list. Last year, I think, and I'm not alone in this, I think a lot of people felt this way. Last year felt kind of lukewarm. There were really good books, but then there were a lot that we were just scratching our heads over. So I'm hoping that this year the list is a little more robust, and that there are less books that we're kind of wondering how on earth they made it onto the list. But whatever that list is, I'm gonna go into it and try to read all of them. I have yet to officially complete the entirety of a Women's Prize long list. Every year I get closer and closer. The previous year I read 14 of them. Last year I managed 15 of them, so maybe this is the year that I get to all 16. So fingers crossed with that. And I will be doing single book reviews for all of the ones that I finish, and I'll do the same for any of my international booker reads, as well as my Women's Prize for nonfiction. I've actually finished a couple of the nonfiction ones already, so there should be videos for those coming out soon. And until we read again, bye!